I was 58 years old when the letter arrived. Not an email or a phone alert, but a real paper envelope sealed with wax. Inside was an invitation that would alter my entire life. Mr. Arjun Mehta. It began. You have been chosen for the Constellation Initiative. Report to Hangar 7 at sunrise. I nearly tossed it out. At my age, you learn to spot scams. But something about that seal, that official government crest, made me pause. One quick call later, I discovered it was genuine. Earth had made contact. They needed everyday people, not soldiers or scholars, to represent humanity in a cultural exchange across the stars. 3 days later, I stood inside a vessel that defied logic, watching Earth fade into a tiny blue. Behind me, the world they sent me to was named Thrios Prime. When I stepped off the craft, the first thing I noticed was the sky. 3 suns hovered above, washing everything in amber and gold light. The air tasted sweet, almost like honey. A welcoming party waited at the landing site. They looked mostly humanoid, though their skin glowed with a soft blue radiance that shifted with their emotions. Their leader, a refined woman called Council Elder Shara, greeted me with practiced elegance. We have arranged a home for you, she said, and assigned a cultural aide to help you adapt. That was when I saw Naira. She stood slightly apart from the group, younger than the others, perhaps in her late 20s by human measure. Her skin was the color of a flawless summer sky, and her dark braided hair fell in intricate patterns I had never seen. She wore simple, graceful clothing and gold jewelry that shimmered in the light. But her eyes stopped me. They held a warmth beyond species, a kindness that needed no explanation. I am Naira, she said, her voice melodic. I will be your guide and companion during your stay. The term in her language roughly meant household attendant. But as the weeks passed, I learned her role was far more than that. Naira was not a servant, she was a mentor, a friend, a bridge between 2 worlds. My new residence was a beautiful home on the edge of their capital. Tall windows overlooked gardens, filled with plants that glowed softly at night. The furniture adjusted to my earthborn body, and the walls displayed calming scenes from both our worlds. Those early weeks were overwhelming. Everything was foreign, the food, the customs, even the way time seemed to flow. I found myself thinking about my life back home, my daughter Sarah, my grandkids, the cafe where I spent Sunday mornings with a newspaper. Naira sensed my homesickness without me saying anything. One evening she found me standing at the window, staring at strange constellations. You miss your world, she said softly. I nodded. 58 years on one planet, it grows on you. She stepped beside me, her presence calming. Tell me about it. About Earth. So I did. I told her about rain, something Thrios Prime rarely saw. I explained snow, how it melted on your tongue as a child. I spoke of my late wife, how we used to dance in our kitchen to old radio songs. Naira listened with full attention, asking questions that showed she truly wanted to understand. In return, she taught me about her world. She explained how their 3 suns shaped their belief in balance. She shared memories of growing up in the mountain colonies where the air was thin and the stars felt close, enough to reach out and touch. I was chosen because I wanted to understand. She told me one day, as we walked through the marketplaces, not just humans but the feeling of being far from everything you know. You know that feeling? I asked. Her smile turned sad. My parents were explorers. They died when I was young, on a mission to the outer rim. I was raised by the community, always wondering what they were searching for out there in the dark. In that moment, past her glowing skin and alien features, I saw someone who understood grief, who lived with questions that had no answers, who'd learned to build a life around a quiet, empty space. We grew close, Naira and I. Not romantically, even though the younger transport pilots teased us whenever they saw us together. Our connection was deeper, more meaningful. She became like a second daughter to me, and I think I became something like the father she lost. She taught me their language, laughing when I struggled with sounds human throats simply weren't designed for. I taught her how to make chai the way my mother had made it, even though we had to replace the spices with local versions that were close but not exact. It tastes like what home must feel like, she said after her first sip. And I realized she understood perfectly. But our calm didn't last. 3 months into my stay, tensions erupted. A faction on Thrios Prime opposed the exchange program, viewing humans as hidden threats. Demonstrations turned violent. The council considered ending the initiative entirely. I was summoned before them, asked to justify why someone like me, an ordinary aging man from a distant world, deserved their time and trust. I stood in their grand chamber, surrounded by beings whose civilization had achieved things we could barely imagine, and I spoke. Honestly, I cannot offer you advanced science or military strategy, I said. I am simply a man who has lived long enough to learn a few truths that fear builds walls, but understanding builds bridges. That differences in appearance matter little compared to the similarities of the spirit. That every world, no matter how far away, holds people who love, who mourn, who dream. The chamber fell silent. Then Naira stepped forward, an action that technically broke protocol for someone of her rank. Honored council, she said, her voice unwavering. Arjun has shown me more about my own world by sharing his. He reminded me why we reach toward the stars. Not to dominate or claim superiority, but to grow, to become more than we once were. Elder Shira studied the two of us for a long, thoughtful moment. Then she smiled. The exchange will continue, she declared, and perhaps we now know who the true teachers among us are. That evening, Naira and I sat on the terrace of my residence, watching the 3 suns sink one after another, coloring the sky in hues no artist on Earth could ever recreate. Thank you, I said quietly, for speaking on my behalf. You took a risk. She shook her head gently. You gave me the courage. You left everything familiar behind to come here and try. That takes far more bravery than anything I said today. You know, I murmured. At 58, I thought the big adventures of my life were over. I figured I was just turning pages until the final chapter. But maybe the best parts of a story arrive when you least expect them. Naira placed her hand on mine, her blue skin warm against my weathered brown fingers. My people say the stars offer no light to those who never lift their eyes. We sat together as darkness spread and the luminous gardens glowed softly around us. 2 beings from worlds that had never touched before. 2 generations, 2 histories, 2 entirely different kinds of life. And yet, in that quiet moment, we were simply 2 souls who had found unexpected companionship in the vast emptiness of the cosmos. I remained on Thrios Prime for another year, learning and sharing, building connections one conversation at a time. And when I finally returned to Earth, I carried back not just diplomatic logs and scientific findings, but something Far more precious.